Hi, everybody. It's Georgia Rose from Zencuda. And today is actually, the show is going to be July 1st, 2024. I'm actually in my home studio today recording this. I will be back live on July 9th. So I am Georgia Rose, founder of Zencuda. And Zencuda is a community online. And also we do events and online classes and all kinds of things for people who are on the journey to finding their authentic self and living empowered in the energy of their soul. So today I'm going to talk about the astrology for the first week of July, the next few days. I'm also going to analyze Joe Biden's chart because I promised I would do that. And I'm kind of chuckling at it because I actually interpreted Donald Trump's chart a couple of weeks ago, and I promised to do Biden's the following week, and then we didn't have a show. So kind of late on the Biden score, but it's funny because everything I did see in his chart is actually happening now. So astrology never lies, right? So we're going to talk about that. And then also I want to talk about a particular transit that we're having this time of year in 2024, and that is the Saturn retrograde. So let's jump right into it. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you'd be so kind as to share the show, if it interests you and you find my work meaningful, I would love that. I am trying to build a private community online, a little bit off of social media. So if you're interested in my work, you can always put your email in the comments below or direct message me on Facebook or Instagram. On Facebook, it is Zencuda Soul Space. And on Instagram, it's Zencuda Official. I also have a website, zencuda.com, which is going to be a beautiful community space for all of us. That's getting unveiled next Monday on the show. Have some free things for you guys and some goodies about that. So I hope you'll be on board next Monday night at 7 o'clock. And also, I have a YouTube channel, which this show will get put on after it is live or taped every Monday at 7. And also, I have over 200 videos about self-development, astrology, some tarot readings, some live chart readings, special guests, all kinds of things on zencuda.com on YouTube. So the body of my work is devoted and dedicated to self-development, to finding our own soul space. And that is why the podcast is called Soul Space. So welcome, welcome. So first I want to talk a little bit about the astrology of the week, what's going on as we jump into July. I can't believe it's July already. I'm actually home today. It's a Sunday afternoon, and I'm taping this show a little bit ahead. And I just woke up this morning. It was a really rainy day, and I said, I'm going to cook Italian. I grew up Italian background, so I love to cook pasta and sauces and have the house smell like that all day. And sometimes I will put on Michael Bublé or Frank Sinatra and just really get into the whole vibe. It's really nice. So I have a couple of people coming over in a little while for some spaghetti and meatballs and sausage. So love doing that. So that's what the energy is all about, because July, we have 3 planets in Cancer. And Cancer is an energy of nesting. Whenever we have planets in Cancer, we want to be a little more quiet, stay home a little bit, maybe nest with our family. So I think this 4th of July for many of us is going to be a little bit more quiet than some in the past. I think we're going to maybe want to have the family barbecue, not the big extravaganza. In the United States, 4th of July is a time when we set off a lot of fireworks. So I would not be surprised if this year it's a little more subdued, both practically speaking in the real world and also in our lives, because we have a couple of planets going retrograde in July as well, which will slow us down a bit. But right now, the Cancer energy is leading the pack with the sun there. And we have Mercury and Venus in Cancer. There's also an asteroid called Vesta, which just came out of Cancer and is popping into Leo. But for the most part, that sun in Cancer is an energy that really is about self-development from the inner landscape. It's an energy that makes us want to be more introspective. Cancer can also be very moody. So this is a month when the sun is in Cancer, when we'll find the moon and where the moon is in the charts is a little bit more sensitive for all of us. That moon energy maybe isn't as subtle when Cancer sun is in play. It will amplify that moon energy. Cancer is ruled by the moon. So we've got the sun in Cancer. Happy birthday to all our Cancers out there. And then we've got Venus in Cancer. Venus in Cancer is a very elusive energy. When Venus is in Cancer, you know, Venus is our values. It's the things we love. But in Cancer, it can sometimes be the rose-colored glasses. Cancer energy is an energy that has a lot to do with our roots, our conditioning as far as the way we relate to things. and the way that we confront things, the way that we relate to conflict, the way that we bring about our own inner emotions, our own vulnerability. And so when we have a planet like Venus, which is our values and our heart's desire, our place in the chart where we really, from a heart perspective, relate to people, and it's in a sign like Cancer, sometimes what can happen is we don't want to be vulnerable. We desire it, but we're fearing it. And so a lot of times when we meet people, the sun is in Cancer, we have a lot of Cancer energy, we can think that they are either better, I hate to use that word, but maybe more compatible than they really are with us. And when the sun moves out of Cancer, we'll start to really see the reality of the relationship. Or it can be a relationship where we have some fear about really showing up in a vulnerable way and letting ourselves really be open. Cancer is a sign of the crab. It likes to go in the shell when something gets a little bit too jumpy or murky or a little bit threatening. So that's why Cancer is an energy that makes us want to go into our safety and our stability and nest and, crawl in our little shell. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people with this much Cancer energy around are home watching a movie with family, or they're, cranking the AC here in New York. It's a little bit warm, and getting their favorite blankie. It's a great time to eat the ice cream sundae. We want to be really in our creature comforts. And it's a time we don't want to be around big crowds, a lot of energy. We want to be in subtle energy. We want to really take it in and find tenderness in the world and that beautiful space of vulnerability where we really can connect. And Mercury is also in Cancer. When Mercury is in Cancer, our intellect is not as sharp as it can be in other signs. It's more governed by our emotions, because Cancer is a very emotional energy. As we said, the moon, water, remember, ruled by the moon, Cancer makes the tides go up and down, ebb and flow. That's how it works on us too. It makes our moods ebb and flow. So Mercury in that sign is a little bit less logical. It's a little bit more emotional. So when someone asks you a question, that may not seem as black and white as it normally is. So that's the energy that we have this month really playing out until about the third week of the month. And I'll be with you every step of the way talking about the astrology, not even just on the Soul Space podcast here, but on a lot of my other videos on YouTube, etc. So watch for those. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, so you get all those come in. But also the big player this month is the Saturn retrograde. And Saturn retrograde is a really interesting energy, especially this time around, because we've got Pluto also retrograde, headed back for Capricorn. It's going into those final degrees of Capricorn from Aquarius, where it's been since the beginning of the year. It'll kind of float around just in those last few degrees of Cap until around November, when it goes back to Aquarius for good, next 20 years. So with Pluto returning to that portion of Capricorn for its final time, it won't be back there in our lifetimes. That is tying up the loose ends of the last 15 years. And I've talked about this on other videos and past shows, but this is really now the end. It's like when you pour out the coffee pot and those dregs are in the bottom of it, this is the energy of that. And so Pluto in Capricorn has been, over the last 15 years or more, since 2008, has been the deterioration, the dissolution, the dispelling of myths, the deterioration and dissolution of a lot of structures in our society, our governments, our religious church things, our schools, our organizations. And it's really brought us into a point in our lives where we are now really looking for what our true belief systems are. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit, because there's some other things floating around about that. So Pluto has really brought that all to the forefront in the last few years. And especially where I live in the United States, the country has been in its Pluto return. Pluto has returned back to where it was when the Constitution was signed and the birth of our nation. And that's really caused a lot of deterioration and decay and transformation in many of our structures and the things that we think are our stability. And Pluto will come in, especially when it's retrograde now, and it will come back into a sign like Capricorn to clear out whatever debris fields are left. And I think that's why things have really come to a head. We had a presidential debate this past week, and it really brought to a head what no longer works, systems that are decayed. And I'm not saying that in any kind of a political point of view. I'm saying that in a reality point of view. Pluto will bring in death in order to have transformation. And that doesn't need to be a literal death of a person. It can be the death of a structure, the death of a belief system. And it does that because it wants it to change and become more solid, more stable, and more authentic and in line with what the frequencies in the United States, particularly in this instance, or in our own personal lives or in our own environments are. So Pluto will come around to really transform those things. And then we have on the 2nd of July, Pluto is retrograde now. Saturn went retrograde on June 30th. And then we have Neptune going retrograde July 2nd. So this is going to create a powerhouse of planets that are all very strong. Their energies and their archetypes will come up and show up a lot deeper in our lives. The Neptune retrograde is an energy that makes us very contemplative. It makes us introspective. It can bring in illusions and also dispel illusions, which is what Saturn retrograde is really big on doing. When Saturn retrograde comes in, it wants to dispel the illusions that we have, while Pluto is retrograde, taking down those organizations, those structures in our personal lives, in our environments, in our ways of life that no longer work. Saturn comes down and deconstructs and demystifies areas where we need to make things more authentic to us. And we have these 3 planets in Cancer, and Cancer energy also does that too. Cancer is our roots. Cancer energy wants us to, or compels us to really dig down to our roots in order to be more authentic. And that's what Saturn does too, but Saturn does it in a different way. Saturn dispels the illusions. Neptune retrograde sometimes can make illusions really come to the surface as well. So we've got all these players, Neptune, Saturn, Pluto, and they're all intermingled with energies of Capricorn, Cancer, which is an axis. They're opposite signs in the zodiac. And Neptune and Saturn are both in Pisces, which is really, really amplifying the energy of connectedness, illusions, elusiveness, things that make us feel out of bounds, things that make us feel like we don't have boundaries, the blurring of boundaries. All of this comes into play. So how is this going to be working out in the collective? And how is this going to be working into our personal lives? This is a lot of energy I'm describing, right? And it's giving us a lot of different flavors of really the same theme. So the theme now is soul growth for authenticity. And we've been in that kind of structure and energy of frequency for a long time. There's so many buzzwords out there now. Oh, be authentic, be real, follow your soul. My shirt says follow your soul today. And that's all great. And it makes wonderful memes on social media. But what does it all really mean? And in this energy, what it means is we're meant to use the things that come up, right? Pluto is digging deep in the last few degrees of Capricorn, and it's digging deep to bring out what no longer serves, what is going to be revealed that now no longer serves our own frequency, where we are now. We've had the last 15 years of structures and organizations falling apart, transforming. We're shown without any filter what does not work in a very blatant, very polarized, very often violent way, right? We have undergone, especially this past year and late in 2023, a lot of depravity that came out in the world. And I don't say that lightly. That's Pluto working to bring a lot of the dirt, a lot of the decay, a lot of the things that we need to look at and don't want to the surface. And now we have Saturn coming in Pisces with Neptune, and they're bringing us an energy of, let's really amplify the dispelling of these delusions, these illusions. Let's really dispel some myths. Why? Not to harm us or hurt us, but so that it becomes more and more clear in our own personal development, the inner landscape of the Cancer energies, where Sun and Venus and Mercury are now. What becomes clearer in that Cancer energy is our own authenticity. Who am I? Who am I? And how do I fit in and reorient myself to all of these myths that are being dispelled, structures that are decaying, right? Saturn, Pluto, and illusions that are being dispelled. Saturn retrograde, Neptune in Pisces, Saturn in Pisces, so that I can connect with myself and with the authenticity of who I am. And Uranus is in play here too. We talk about Uranus a lot on my podcast, and that energy is really heightened, especially for me now in my personal chart. Uranus is coming in here to create a defragmentation. It wants to decentralize things. So Pluto brings what's decaying and what no longer works up to the surface. Saturn comes in to dispel the delusions and the myths about what we thought those really were. And then Uranus comes in to shake it all up, a big kind of like earthquake, an energy shake, in order that we have to look at it. We can't no longer look at it anymore. And what this does in the long run is it brings up our authenticity, because in these debris fields, the only thing we have to turn to is source energy to stabilize ourselves, which is very Piscean, right? Going into the inner landscape Cancer and finding that source energy in Pisces, that connection with the divine. That I feel so out of bounds. I don't know where I've been taken to. The only place for me to go is to source, the source within and divine energy. And that's where we find our anchor, our stability. And that's where all of these things that are happening, the structures, the organizations, the things even in our own personal life. Maybe we're waking up and we no longer want to do the job we've done for 20 years. We want to do a completely different identity. Maybe we've been in a long-term relationship and now all of a sudden we're seeing the gaslighting or the illusion that's been taking place. And we're like, yeah, this isn't me. This isn't who I am anymore. And all of this is coming to a head, and Uranus is accelerating this. And the reason why I'm laughing and I look joyful about this is because for me personally, what this energy has done, and I think it will do for many, is it's brought me to a place where it's challenged my own authenticity. And in the dispelling of illusions and in the decaying of structures, I've had to really go in to my inner landscape, that Cancer energy. Cancer is that inner landscape, what's in the shell of the crab, and really answer those questions. Who am I? What's my frequency? Where am I really going in my life? What's my trajectory? Not the trajectory of the Capricorn energy of tradition, old structure, what I've been told to believe, what my family of origin gave me as coping mechanisms that probably don't work anymore for me. What the traditions were that just don't make sense, right? What this has all done now is force my authenticity to come in when I ask, who am I? Because I've had to go to a place where I've had to find what does work, what is normal, quote unquote, what feels good for me. And it's been interesting to answer those questions. And so the cosmos that we have right now, the sky, the zodiac that we have right now, it's given all three of these planets a retrograde, Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto, because we're going to go deep in ourselves. We're going to really look at, who am I? What is the energy that really is underlying in my life that needs to go? And it's challenging because Pluto is also our attachments. So this means for some of us, really letting go of like really big, deep attachments. And the real reason why I'm laughing at that is because it's not funny per se, but it's interesting also from my own perspective these last few months, really looking at, what am I attached to? What am I worshiping? Because the things we're attached to, the things we think about all the time, the first thing you think about when you wake up in the morning, you're worshiping that thing because you're giving it all your attention and your mind and your heart and your emotions. You're there in it. You're worshiping it. And I realized some of the things I were worshiping were, quite frankly, BS. And that I could really spend my time in a lot better places, really attaching myself to things that were really more healthy and more good and brought out my joy and expanded my love in my life. And I thank God for a mentorship I recently had with someone for the last 6 months, and also with a beautiful bunch of new people that I met all over the world online, that have shown me what's out there in the world and how I've been like fencing myself in that structure, Capricorn energy, that Saturn limitation, authority, and where in our life can we flip the script so that we become our own authority? And now we're using Saturn to show us our not just not a limitation, but our own authority, our own agency of like, oh, this is the structure that makes sense for me. And where can we use our own Pluto, that beautiful energy of transformation, like make friends with attachments instead of them harming us and being the root of our suffering, allowing our attachments to be some things that are beautiful and that we love to really just swim in, just gorgeous, gorgeous energy. And I hope I'm making sense for all of you, because this is truly a cosmos, a sky, an energy out there, frequency in the world where we have an opportunity to reorient ourselves to what's truly authentic to us. I have a friend, and if he's watching, he'll know who he is. I won't mention his name, but he recently retired from a job that he did for a very long time, kind of a high-powered competitive field. And he's making music and living his best life. And he had written something on social media about how this is the first time in 20 or 30 years he's been off for the summer. And I just wanted to just cheer that on, because that is the embodiment of this energy. Go out there and feed your soul space. And we all have certain limitations. We can't all just drop the ball and go running into the forest and commune with nature for 24 hours a day. We've got to make a living and we have to survive. But there's things within that framework of Saturn, limitations, authority. There's things within that framework that you can make work for you. But we can only do it when we let go of the attachments of the past. And speaking again on a personal level, the attachments to my past were a tremendous amount of gaslighting. Since I was young enough to understand the language of English language, I think I've been gaslighted as a very, very small baby up until this very day. And allowing that to form an identity for me, allowing myself to believe some of the things that people said about me, when now I know that's not true. And I know who I am. And it is the most liberating feeling in the world. Some of the other structures and attachments that I had were, things from unworthiness to thinking that I always had to have someone help me do things. I'm a very strong, powerful person, but yet when it came time to some really major life decisions or, going places that were far and wide, I would always think I had to have a partner in business or a friend, or, I don't want to go on that vacation alone. Let me bring so-and-so with me, or, that codependency from my Libra sun. And now I don't feel the need to do that. I'm really good at doing so many things by myself. I've been like that for many years, but now it's really conscious. Now it's in my subconscious. Now it's not like I'm enjoying the movie, but waiting to see if anybody I know walks in the theater. Now it's just really okay. And that's a really beautiful thing. Deeply resonates with me. I spend hours and hours by myself alone with my astrology books and just, certain TV series or certain things that I love to do, maybe walking in the park or whatever it might be. And I'm really feeling good about doing that. I don't feel that unbearable loneliness that I used to feel in years and years ago. And so those are some of the things that came forward from me discovering myself and asking myself, who am I? Am I the girl who really wants to go out and dance crazy at the beach hut until 1 a.m? Sometimes I feel like doing that, and I might go for a couple hours, but I'm not spending every day of my life doing that. I don't need that escapism. I don't need and I'm not bashing anybody. If that's the way that you connect with the world, then that's beautiful. But for me, I don't need to be in so much of a whirling energy. I like my solitude and I like my quiet. I love sharing the wisdom that I learned through the stars with people. And these are all things that are me. These are all things that make me feel whole. And in becoming more awake, in becoming more understanding of who I am. And that's going to be a unique thing for everybody, right? There's no perfect size 4. There's no perfect wisdom that we're supposed to learn. You're supposed to learn what your soul wants to. You're supposed to embody a body that feels right for your soul. You're supposed to wear your hair the color your soul wants it to be. You're supposed to dress like your soul wants it to be. That's becoming awake to who you are. And as we become more and more awake, what happens is we become more authentic. And that's what authenticity is. And that's what all this stuff in the cosmos wants us to do. Because once we do that and we become more awake and more authentic, that's where the reorientation of ourselves into society, into relationships, into what structures we really want to work with, into what we want to read, what we want to listen to, what we want to, how we want to dance, who we want to be our friends. That's the reorientating that will now have to take place. We're in the last part of the Pluto breaking down those structures, the dispelling, dispersing of the delusions, the myths, the confusion. And it's funny that it's until November. I know what you're all thinking in the States here. That's when our elections are. But this is really heavy energy. And so this is going to be a summer where you're going to see a lot of things change, especially out in the collective. Keep in mind, there are people in the collective, especially those in power in different things, not just politics, but all kinds of power, from financial things to companies to whatever, that don't like things to change, especially people who have power based on the old paradigms and the old norms. These are the people who you're going to see panic and act out, and maybe some not so nice things happen because change means a loss of power for them. You also have to realize, when we're talking about becoming more awake, that many people in power will be compelled to gaslight us and give us more fodder, more feed to try and keep us in the old structures and the old paradigms. Other people in power will try and make us believe that we have to actually reverse things and spin the world back to where it once was. It's never going to happen. I don't know of any history that ever spun the earth back in time. Maybe we should all go watch that movie Back to the Future and see what happens. It didn't turn out so good. They had to come back. So I don't think this is an energy of going back. It's not an energy of finding our baby blanket and drinking on our bottle. This is an energy of severing those attachments and going into the future, a future that looks like our own authenticity and who we are in getting there. So that's all those retrogrades and Saturn and Neptune and Pisces and Neptune and Pluto headed back for Capricorn and all that beautiful Cancer energy we have. And I'll do more videos about it, each pulling it apart separately. So now I want to talk for a few minutes, just a little while, about Joe Biden's chart, because I promised you guys to do this. And it's funny because I don't even really feel like a lot of passion to do this. I just feel like I promised it, so I'm going to do it. I did Trump's chart. That video is up on Zencuda. You can watch that whenever you guys want. This chart, Joe Biden's chart, is very different. Joe Biden was actually born on, just reading my notes here. I'm sorry, I'm looking away from the camera. November 20th, 1942. He was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania at 8:30 a.m. So for any of you astrologers out there that want to, post the chart, astro.com has it in there. Astro, vault, so you can just bring it right up. He is a, just looking at the chart, sorry guys. He is a Scorpio sun, a Sagittarius moon, and his rising sign is in Sagittarius also. So he is going to be a lot about, I'm sorry, Sagittarius, erase that. He's a Scorpio sun, Sag rising, and he is a Taurus moon, I think. I'm looking at his chart here. Yeah, his moon is in Taurus at exactly 0 degree. So he's in the just coming off of that Aries energy, which is very interesting. So Sagittarius rising, all about the truth. He's been a truth seeker in his life. He's compelled to seek the truth. He is a Scorpio sun, which I would say don't get on the wrong side of Joe. He's going to sting you. I know I have a Scorpio moon. He's also got Venus there and Mercury right on his sun, which also makes him very intellectually stimulated. But Mercury on his sun, a lot of times it's like a Cazimi effect. And sometimes when you have Mercury, I was looking up at the chart, Mercury, when you have it so close to the sun, especially it's very close to his ascendant, it will sometimes act like a Mercury retrograde. And I think that's why sometimes he does stumble when he speaks. And I don't mean now in the current present energy. He obviously has some cognitive things going on or whatever that is. I'm not a doctor. I can't diagnose. But if you look at even video of him when he was younger, he does sometimes stutter and have a speech impediment. or mumble or fumble words. And I think that's very indicative of Sun Mercury combinations, because it will cause us sometimes our communication to like almost be too lit up, like your mind works faster than your mouth kind of thing, because the sun's there, like, hitting that. Um, Especially on the ascendant there. He also has Venus there, which would mean that a lot of his communication, Mercury, is going to be a little bit more compassionate than you would see his opponent. And in younger years, if you look at his videos, you can see that he seemed to be oftentimes kind of heartfelt, like his emotions do come in a little bit, which you don't see with most politicians. Now, I'm not making a judgment whether the emotions are correct or not. I'm just saying you oftentimes see him doing that. Not as much now. I think as he has gotten older and maybe a little bit more cognitive things coming through, you'll notice with people who get older, oftentimes they're a little more detached. And for those of you who have had older parents or older people in your world, you'll know what I mean. But one of the things that strikes me of his transits right now and what's going on is he has a lot of things transit in his eighth house. His eighth house is a Cancer energy. He's got obviously the Sun, Venus, and Mercury all transiting that area of the chart. And the eighth house is death, other people's resources, it's transformation, it's very Plutonian energy. And his Sun is ruled by Pluto, and so is his Mercury and his Venus. So with a transit like that going over his eighth house, this speaks to me of very, very deep transformation. And I believe this is almost like there's no way with transits like this, especially Saturn in Pisces is right on his IC, which is family home. Usually when you see Saturn, a limitation like that in that, around that fourth house, it's actually in the third and fourth house for him. When you're looking at that, that speaks of a change in residence, a change in home, something limiting his ability in the home factor. It is opposing the 10th house, which is your career and the way the world sees you. Bring that in with all those eighth house planets of transformation. I don't see the trajectory staying the same. It's going to change in a very drastic way. What is the chart saying to me? I feel like it's kind of saying, and I'm doing this intuitively, not just from the transits. I really feel this, from a psychic point of view. There's a very good chance that he may drop out of the race and use an excuse of a family member. And that's just how I'm feeling with that Saturn and Saturn going retrograde on that IC area of his chart. It's like very, very close. Like his IC, which is all your family, your history, your roots, that's at 19 degrees of Pisces. Saturn is going retrograde at 19 degrees of Pisces. So that's really something that's also going to dispel illusions. Like, maybe you think a family member is more healed than they are, or maybe, in Pisces, it could be addictions. So I'm wondering if something happens with Hunter and Joe drops out, says he's needed at home, or something happens in that regard. Now, I'm not predicting this as a drop dead kind of like this is what's going to happen. I'm just saying that's what the energy feels like to me. But within that energy, there is like, 10 other scenarios that could happen. But I think that's the theme, is what I'm saying. And the other reason why I think that is because Uranus is transiting in Taurus, his sixth house, which is work, service to the world. With Uranus there, that's going to be a sudden, unexpected change. He's also got Jupiter in Gemini transiting his natal Saturn. So that means Jupiter is limited in there. It's his seventh house. It's relationships. Some kind of a myth is dispelled with relationship for him. And with the energy going down there in the fourth house with the family members, there's definitely something that happens, a change, something to do with family, home, roots, security. And it is playing into him having to change the career path, having to a real big transformation. That's all I'm going to say on it. Pluto, eighth house is, death and transformation, not always literal death. I'm not predicting that. It is definitely the death of an environment, a way of life, a belief system, things like that, to transform. And we went through that quite a bit in the chart. So that is pretty much where we're at with all that kind of stuff. And I think that it could go either way. But what I've always been saying about this election from like 3 years now, I don't think it's going to be Biden or Trump when we get to that gate. I think there's a lot of other things that are going to play out between now and November, especially when you have a sky like this. And this sky isn't just very dynamic, which all skies really are. This is huge potential for things to be very dynamic. But this is also an energy of deep, deep transformation, reorientation, authenticity. We have many more things that are going to come out in the next couple of months that are going to be the things that were not authentic coming to the surface and rising. A perfect example was in the States here, Biden being revealed during the debate. And I'm saying this strictly from, just a almost like a medical point of view. I mean, if I was watching anyone on that stage, I would know that they were struggling. And that came to light, and we really didn't see that. Most of us were like, well, I don't know, maybe, he's older, but there's been a lot of older presidents. He seems to be okay when he delivers his State of the Speech and State of the Nation and things like that. I don't really know what is true. And I think when we watched the debate, suddenly things were revealed that were truth. That's also the energy of Jupiter and Gemini. What is true? Who am I? What's authentic to me, etc. And we're going to see a lot more of that. Other things will be revealed, especially on very potential, figures that have the potential to be world leaders, not just in my country here in the States, but in other countries. You're going to see a lot of things really transform in that regard. And that's really the astrology right now. So I am going to just go take a quick peek at all of my notes and see if there's anything else I wanted to talk about. Okay, so yes, there is one more thing. So the Saturn retrograde. So this Saturn retrograde is in Pisces. What is Pisces? I don't know. I should coin that word. Is in Pisces, which we have said. So this is where a lot of the word I want to use, and I wrote in my notes, was disenfranchised. We're becoming disenfranchised about the way we see the world, and that has to happen in order for us to recreate it, and in order for us to reorient ourselves to what is new and what we can do. When Pluto goes into Aquarius come November for good, for the next 20 years, not forever, but for like the next 20 years, that brings in an energy of future, pioneering. We're going to like really be looking to the future. In this next little while to November, we're going to be regurgitating the past a little bit for the purposes of next November, when we finally have that Aquarian energy and can really see in it, because now we have the awareness of what doesn't work. So this is not just a reordering of the collective and the world we live in and the environments and the structures. It's also a reordering of what deep inside of us, because Pluto is the soul, what deep inside of us needs to come around and be reoriented and reorganized for our priorities and what is valuable to us. What are our priorities? What is truly meaningful to us? And we're going to reorder that. It's almost like taking a Rubik's Cube and reordering it to be more reflective of our own authenticity. That's really the energy. I also think of it as, I had someone once who told me the totem pole analogy, and we all have a totem pole. The totem pole is how we prioritize things in our life, right? And we should always be on the top of that totem pole, because we should be the top priority in our life, hands down, all the time. Because without that happening, we can't prioritize anything else. So this is a great time to look at the totem pole. What are the priorities? What's on your pole? And where do they need to be restacked so that they really show and resonate and connect with your authentic self? The answer to the question, who am I? This is what's deeply meaningful and resonates with me. This is what is my priorities based on who I really am. And the more awake we become, the more that comes in. So for the next little while, especially July, August, September, October, look at your life, look at your relationships, your environment, what you do for a living, the way you spend your time, the way you speak to yourself, the way you speak to others, the things you take in your media, your music, your written word, your spoken word. Look at all of that through the lens of you as an individual, you as a unique person. not in a competitive way where you're holding yourself up to those structures and organizations and belief systems that you're supposed to look in as a mirror. Because I think the mirror is now broken. We can't see in that mirror anymore. And we have to turn inward to really see who we are. The mirror doesn't show us anymore. None of the structures, none of the things that are out there in the world are really resonating who we are. It has to come from within. And especially this month of July, when we have planets in Cancer, we want that to come from within based on our own personal inner landscape. And what's going to happen with that is eventually, when we have that stability, we're going to be able to grow our own roots, form our own structures, feel really good and really comfortable in our own agency and our own authority. And that makes me want to cry for humanity, because that's really why we're put here on this earth. And that's the soul space. So I welcome you into my other media, Zenkuda Official on Instagram, Zenkuda on YouTube. I am going to be launching a website this week. We're going to talk about it next Monday, the 9th. All about, you can go one place where you can find my online courses, my products, my video, a community where you can all chat. It's a really beautiful place. You'll find my blogs there about astrology, about my own journey to self-development, everything. Because I feel like we need a cohesive energy for people who are on the path to find the awakening of who we are, to find the authority and the agency of who we are and live in that full potential. And that's Zenkuda. And it's not easy. It's hard. It's dirty and gritty when Pluto comes in and pulls all that dirt out up in for us to be released and get the attachment off and find new things. It's tough. And we need a community and a group where we're all supporting each other. And that is what evolutionary astrology has been for me. So a lot of my video and a lot of my things are going to be, really evolutionary astrology heavy. But I think that's a lightness, it's a medicine, and I hope you'll all join me. So thank you so much for tuning into the Soul Space. If this resonated with you, share the show. And stay tuned. Next Monday night, I'll be back live in the studio and hopefully have a lot more info for you on just about everything and how my week went. Love to hear how your week went. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.